Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Ask the Doc, Life Lessons You Should Have Been Taught in School. Hello, I'm Dr. TonyVercillo. I'm your host. Today's episode is going to be about investing. To invest or not to invest? That's the question. During episode 1, I discussed with you that investing is all about the acronym CDLP. Let's get started with that. C stands for commitment. If you're not committed to investing for the long term, don't bother. Because investing in whether it's the stock market, real estate, it doesn't matter, is a long-term play. It's not the short game, it's the long game that's going to make you successful. Warren Buffett once said, when asked the question, what is the key to success in the field of investing? His answer was patience, patience, and more patience. The D in CDLP stands for diligence. You need to be incredibly diligent and monitoring your portfolio, your entire portfolio. I spend about an hour to 2 hours each week tweaking my Roth IRA, my 401k, my 3 stock portfolios, my real estate portfolio, and I pay attention to what's going on in the world and in the field of investing. Look, the global economy invests $110 trillion into the stock market. There's got to be a way for you to get involved in this and capture just a small share of that piece of the market. The L in CDLP stands for listening. I spend an inordinate amount of time listening to the news, watching the news online, and paying attention to what's happening in the global economy. Because as things occur throughout the world, whether it's the war that Israel's involved in, the war in Ukraine, a tsunami, an earthquake, etc., a bankruptcy even, it causes the stock market and therefore individual stocks to either falter or create windfalls. So very important that you listen. Keep your ear on the news. And then P stands for patience, as I alluded to with Warren Buffett. You have to be really patient in the world of investing. In fact, if you're young, let's say 21 years old, and you invest about $450 a month for the next 30 years, you'll have over $1 million, assuming you get a decent return. Look, if you can't get a return of at least minimally 7-8%, personally, I shoot for 13, 14, even 15% returns on anything that I invest in. If I can't make 15%, I'll put my money somewhere else. But in your case, since you're just starting out, if you can't get at least 7 or 8%, then do something else. So again, CDLP is at the core of this. The secondary thing to think about is something called 50-30-20. It's been stated by many of the pundits within the field of investing that you should take 50% of your net income after tax and put it towards things you need, rent, car, etc. 30% should be put into things you desire, whatever they may be. And 20% should be in savings. Now, I know 20% sounds rather steep. I can tell you the United States, we only save anywhere between 5 to 10% max, most people even 5% of their earnings. It's just not enough. At foreign countries, Japan and places like that, they are investing 15 to 20% of their earnings into the long-term investment pool. So it's critical that you spend a decent amount of your money by investing it. So 50-30-20, 50% on needs, 30% on wants, 20% in investing. Now, let's get started on how you should begin in the world of investing. First thing I want you to do is open up either an Acorn, a Robinhood, or a Wealthfront account. These are forced savings applications that allow you to use a debit card. You go to get gasoline, you use your debit card, you pay $53.23, and then the app will round up and take the 77 cents and put it into whatever portfolio you tell it to. They typically have conservative, moderate, and aggressive. And depending upon your age and your tendency to for risk, that'll dictate whether you use one of the 3. I tend to use the moderate one myself. So I want you to set that up. Also, you may want to use a multiplier. I use a multiplier of 5, and I generate between $400 and $600 a month of money in the Force Savings app, and then I sweep that into my investment portfolio at the end of each month. The second thing I want you to do is go out and go get a high yield savings account or checking account. There's many of them out there. In the secret episode, I'm going to disclose to you exactly which Force Savings app that I use, exactly which savings, high yield savings account that I use. But for your information, just go out and go get a high yield savings account. You could just Google it and come up with it. And what I do is I sweep whatever my income is at the end of the month. I make sure I'm putting most of my money into the high yield savings account. So to recap thus far, you're going to set up a Force Savings account like Acorn, Robinhood, or Wealthfront by using your debit card. Use a multiplier, and that's going to allow you to save money, and you won't even notice it because you use your debit card each and every day. You're going to then set up a high yield savings or checking account, if not both, and make sure you sweep whatever money you got coming in into this account so you can get a high yield. I'm getting around 5% or so on my high yield savings account. After you do that, you're going to open up a brokerage account. I don't care which one. There's a whole plethora of them, whether it's Charles Schwab, E-Trade, it doesn't really matter. And again, in a secret episode, I'll tell you which one that I use. I also use, by the way, besides a regular brokerage account, I use Sophie, which is another thing I want you to set up, which I'll talk about in a second. You're going to set up a brokerage account, and you're going to set up 3 portfolios. Portfolio 1 is a growth portfolio. We're going to put stocks like Amazon, Walmart, and the like into that growth portfolio account. Portfolio number 2 is going to be a dividend account. That's going to create passive income for you. That's for stocks such as Procter & Gamble, Johnson & Johnson, Reality Income, Enterprise Product Partners, etc. And again, in a secret episode, I'll show you precisely what I do with those 2 accounts. The third portfolio is going to be a speculative portfolio where you're going to put IPO, initial public offering stocks, or stocks that you got a tip on or something to that effect, and you're going to put that into the speculative portfolio. Please keep in mind that speculative portfolios are like going to Vegas and putting 50,000 on red. So make sure any money you put into that speculative account is risk money, that you can risk it and you can lose it. I mentioned a minute ago, the other thing I do is I set up a SoFi account. And the reason I do that is because I use a DRIP program, dividend reinvestment program, by buying fractional shares on Sophie. So if you're going to buy stocks like Amazon or Microsoft or even Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's stock, you're allowed to buy fractional shares, 0.2, 0.3 shares of a very expensive stock. And that way you could ride that wave of these stocks that are doing extremely well, but are hard to afford. So again, just to recap, I want to make sure I'm being very, very clear with you. 1, you're going to set up a Force Savings app like Acorn, Robinhood, or Wealthfront. Use your debit card and use a multiplier on that app and try to generate a few $100s a month that you're going to sweep into your investment portfolio. You're going to set up a high interest savings account, which again, I'll get into in specifics in the secret episode on Patreon. And that's going to help you sweep whatever money, payroll money, etc. you have coming in into a high yield of around 5%. You're going to open up a Sophie or SoFi account, a brokerage account with them, and you're going to use that to buy fractional shares of expensive stocks. Then you're going to open up another brokerage account, and it could be through any of the large brokerage firms, and you're going to set up those 3 accounts that I talked about: a growth portfolio, a dividend-paying portfolio, and a speculative portfolio. By doing those things, you're setting yourself up for success in the future. Again, I might add, as I alluded to earlier, it's really critical that you're putting aside between 10 and 20% of whatever you earn into your savings, and do this consistently, monitor it, watch it, tweak it on a week-by-week basis so that at the end of the year, you reposition whatever stocks you have to make sure you're not losing any money on something that may have happened to a particular stock. For example, Johnson & Johnson right now, which is a great stock, pays a good dividend, historically has had earnings per share growth that's very consistent and constant growth in its dividend. Right now, they're involved in a serious major lawsuit that could hurt them. So you got to keep your ear on the news to see if that's going to impact Johnson & Johnson. Personally, I still think it's a really good stock. So now, the other thing I want to mention to you is be careful with what I would call whisper stocks. When your friends come to you and they say to you, oh, I got this great stock for you. You know, the old saying, comparison is the thief of joy. Be careful comparing your portfolio or your stocks against anybody else's. It has to be right for you. And most people who give you some sort of a stock tip, 80% of those stock tips never amount to anything. So be super, super careful with that. Okay, if you're a beginning investor, you're young, you're 21, you're 22 years old, one of the ways to invest in these stocks in those three portfolio is to use 25% growth stocks, 25% dividend stocks, 25% tech stocks, and 25% consumer product stocks. That's another way of doing some initial investment, let's say with your first $1,000. In the episode 3, I'm going to do specific stock recommendations, as I will also in the secret episode on Patreon, so watch out for that. If you like what you've heard, please send me a review. If you don't, please tell me what you'd like to see differently. I really like to listen to my customers, if you will, and my clients, so tell me what else you'd like to see or hear. Please join my Patreon channel if you get a chance. I'd love to have you part of the family. And with that, like I said, episode 3 is going to be a little bit about specific stocks and also a little bit about the real estate market. So with that, signing off, it's Dr. V.